Hello, Bridge Church. Welcome, to my workplace. As you might see, I'm recording this at work. One, because my home is not as quiet as my workplace is, and we're online. So I'll be honest with you. We are back online, and I was actually really looking forward to being able to see all of you face to face. But I am so grateful that we can still meet, even if it's virtually. I want to ask you a question. How do you prioritize? Now, personally, I've read a huge amount of books on prioritizing. I've listened to loads of talks and podcasts and sermons. I've been on courses about prioritizing. I speak to people all the time about prioritizing. And I think last year I even preached all about staying focused and prioritizing. Just struggled to actually put it into practice myself. I was thinking about this. I was thinking of some of the areas where I struggle to prioritize. And I mentioned to Esther, and she said, "Oh, Brad, there are so many." A while back, I decided I'd make a roast dinner. And, roast dinner, the thing I like is peas. So I put the peas on first, and they were done a good hour and a half before anything else. Or when we went out camping, and I was thinking how much I wanted to get the bed set up, and I started blowing up the air mattress before we'd actually put the tent up. Now, I tend to just do whatever's in front of me first. Now, the flip side to this is, when I play with my kids, absolutely anything fun can happen. We have so many brilliant games. We invented Upgrade Chess, which you can ask me about, which is a game where literally anything can happen. When my kids look back, they will say, "My dad wasn't super organized, but he was a lot of fun." And you know what? When I write a talk, you might notice the structure's a little bit like that too. The structure is all over the place, like the way I think, but it's filled with nuggets of gold. So if you're listening and you're thinking, "I don't know where this is going," just listen out for the nuggets of gold, and hopefully you're in to win with that. And maybe, if you're a bit like me, you might find this whole thing helpful too. Now, one thing I want to say before I go much further is that the last time I spoke, back in August, I said how the first lockdown had left me feeling lower than I'd been for years previously. And that was in August, the sunniest, most beautiful month of the year. And now we're in November, the dark, cold, wet November. And we're back in another lockdown. So you might be feeling low about all of this. But I want to bring you, and me, a message of hope and encouragement today. I've been praying a lot for God to give me something helpful to be able to say. And I've been praying for that. And there's been a song that has just been going on over and over in my head. I've been playing it everywhere, in the house, on my walks, in the car. And it's been really uplifting. It's been so helpful for me when I've been low. And I feel like there might be something in it for all of us. It's from the album Roar by Passion, which was the last big Christian conference in America. It was in January, before everything shut down. And the song is called All Praise. And the line that I can't seem to get out of my head is, "Why should my heart grow weary? Don't be so downcast, O my soul. You are in every moment the greatest miracle." Now that final line, "You are in every moment the greatest miracle," has been what's been helping me to see the opportunities that God has been putting in front of me. Now I'm going to come back to that, but first I want to read the passage that we have today and talk about it. So you might have heard this passage before. I've heard it preached about, I'm sure, 100 times, but that probably just means there's something really valuable in here. No, it's a short passage. It's in Luke chapter 10, verse 38 to 42. So Jesus has just finished telling the story of the Good Samaritan, and he's wandered into another village. As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village, and a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. Now, there's one point that I want to pull out here, which is just a quick aside. Now, a lot of scholars believe that the term "to sit at the Lord's feet" It's an idiom. It's an expression. It's an expression that would be used when a rabbi taught one of his disciples. So later, in the New Testament, in Acts 22, verse 3, Paul uses that same expression to say that he was educated at the feet of Gamaliel, a famous rabbi of the time. So it seemed likely that Jesus is teaching Mary like one of his disciples. So anyway, back to our passage. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, "Lord, don't you care that my sister's left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her to help me." "Martha, Martha," the Lord answered, "you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken from her." Now, this is one of those rare passages in the Bible where I've been told that I should definitely ignore Jesus and actually finish loading the dishwasher before I sit down to read my Bible or listen to a sermon. Now, the amazing thing about doing church online is you can actually pause this live stream right now and you can finish cleaning the kitchen as well if you're like me. Are you back? Okay. Well, I think that it's possible there might be a bit more going on than just Martha being annoyed about her sister, about the dishwasher. And sometimes just working out what the passage says can give some really helpful insights. And there are a few things that stood out for me. First, what Martha's doing is really important. People need to eat. And as I said, dishes need to be cleaned. We've all been at that one party where the only food is a packet of What's-Its. Or that wedding where all of a sudden a bunch of extra people turn up unexpectedly, and suddenly what was already slim pickings at that buffet descends into a brutal tug of war for that last dried out bread roll. You know, these things are important, but when Martha calls out her sister for not helping out, Jesus doesn't say, wait, I only let you sit here because I thought you'd finish all your chores. Are you not finished? Go sort those out. No. He tells Martha that few things are needed and that Mary has chosen what's better. You know what he doesn't say? He doesn't tell Martha that she should be sat here too. He leaves that for her to decide. Now there's a quote from A.W. Tozer that I love. It says, "Be hard on yourself, but easy on others. Carry your own cross, but never lay it on the back of another." Now, Martha might have felt a burden to ensure that the catering was perfect for Jesus, but Mary didn't feel that same burden. You know, only a few chapters earlier, Jesus just fed 5,000 people with only a few loaves of bread and a couple fish. So I'm fairly sure that if there was a real problem with the food, Jesus could have sorted it out. And, you know, one of his the very first miracles was sorting out a catering problem at a wedding. So he already has a bit of experience with sorting out last-minute food and drink problems. But Jesus wanted Mary more than the things she could do for him. Now, I've said this before, and I'll say it again, but you are more important than what you do. Now, that doesn't mean that what you're doing isn't important and valuable. And I hope that this is freeing for you. But if you stopped doing whatever it is that you're doing, things would carry on. Now, they may not carry on as smoothly or as well, but they would carry on. If any of what you're doing feels like a burden that you can't cope with, you need to know that you can lay that down. Now, I'm not talking about the essentials like feeding your family or working or loving the people around you. It's those temporary burdens, the ones that you only took on for a little bit. They weren't the voluntary ones, and they somehow become permanent for you. And sometimes remember the why of what you're doing. Now, I think I stumbled on a treasure trove of quotes by A.W. Tozer, because another one that felt really helpful for this was, "It's not what a man does that determines whether the work is sacred or secular, but it's why he does it." Now, if Martha were to stop and reflect on why she was doing what she was doing, she might have done one of two things. She might have decided that what she was doing was completely worth it, And she didn't care who helped her. I mean, she had the opportunity to cater for Jesus. Or she might have decided that in this moment, it was more important for her to stop and listen to Jesus with Mary. And that people might be a bit hungry and grumpy, but this was more important right now. The why is so essential. If you don't know why you're doing what you're doing, absolutely anything can feel like a burden. Whereas when you know the why behind what you're doing, all of a sudden it feels like an opportunity. And this was perfectly captured by the story of that janitor at NASA who was asked once what he did, and he said, "I helped put a man on the moon." He understood why he was doing what he was doing. And I think it may be why that line from the song resonates with me so much. Why should my heart grow weary? Don't be so downcast, O my soul. You are in every moment. You're my greatest miracle. Because seeing Jesus in every moment has been slowly helping me to answer that question in my day-to-day. My heart has been downcast. My heart has been weary. But when I've stopped to look around, I've seen Jesus at work in so many ways. I've been frustrated that we haven't been able to meet in person. But more than at any other time, I've started to look for Jesus outside of the church building. I've started to see Jesus at work in huge ways in my office and in the interactions I have with the people around me. I've had so many more conversations recently with people about what really matters, about what they believe, about faith, about purpose. And a good part of that is because of this interruption. This lockdown has meant that people have been reevaluating their life and their priorities. Jesus is in every one of those moments, even when I don't say his name. God is far bigger than our church. And our goal isn't to get people into our church building. Our goal is to get people into a relationship with Jesus, to help them to be able to sit at Jesus' feet. Now, the church is a fantastic vehicle to help people meet with Jesus. And I think the church is one of the best places to bring people into community. But it's not the only way people are going to meet with Jesus. There will be a lot of people who we encounter who are in our community who are unlikely to ever set foot in our church. These are people who we might only have a brief encounter with, a brief opportunity to share the mystery and joy of God with. We might, for a moment, be able to give them a picture that there's more to life than this. If we think that our only goal is to get people into our church building so that, like Martha, we can finally have some more people to help in the kitchen, we are going to be disappointed. Our hearts will be weary and our souls will be downcast because it'll always feel like there's too much work and there won't ever be enough people to help. But God has called us to so much more than that. When we know our why, all of a sudden, it doesn't feel like a burden. It feels like a blessing and an opportunity. The other day at work, we had a volunteering day for our team. We went off to Blaze Castle Estate, and we were cutting back all the rhododendrons. And I finally learned what a rhododendron was. Now, it was a rainy, cold day, and we spent the whole day doing the hard work of digging and cutting back these trees and stumps and rhododendrons. And for a group of people who normally spend all day behind a keyboard, this could have been a shock to the system. But instead, it was one of the best days that any of us had had in ages. We were talking to the groundskeeper about how we've been on loads of team building days where we paid for, and that this was better than any of those previous team building days. And I believe that it was because there was a purpose to what we were doing. There was a bigger why. We were cutting back the rhododendrons so the light would be able to shine in and the other plants would have a chance to grow. We're making the park a better place for everyone else. And Jesus was in that moment, in the rain and the mud, in the pulling up of the roots and the cutting back of those branches. Jesus was in those conversations too, talking to different people. There was such an openness about how low they've all been, how lonely they have been during lockdown. And we were able to talk about faith, community, and belief. Going back to that story of Mary and Martha, growing up, often, when I heard people speak about this story, often I ended up just feeling guilty. There was sometimes a sense that doing anything practical was somehow the lesser option, the less holy option. Poor Martha. Why is she there doing all that work in the kitchen? You know, she should be up in her room reading her Bible and just journaling. But I'm not sure that's what's happening. What I do see is someone trying to push her burden onto someone else. I think it's the attitude that's the problem. It's the feeling of the have to. It reminds me of the story of the prodigal son. The older brother comes in from the field to see his dad giving a party for his younger brother. And he gets cross with his dad, and he says that he's been slaving away for him this whole time, and he hasn't even had a single goat. It's a why all over again. Why was he doing all this work for his dad? Why are you doing all the work you're doing? When I think about the times I've been the most run down and worn out, it's when I've felt like I've been carrying somebody else's burden. Whereas I've had such joy and energy when I'm working to my strength and to my purpose. So as an example, I absolutely love working with young people. It is such a privilege. I love finding out what they think, asking them questions. I love seeing the world through their eyes. I love the messy, silly games we get up to. So working with the young people does not feel like a burden for me. It feels like pure joy. I feel like I'm in my element. But if someone were to say to me, Brad, we need to put some new decking out at the front of the church. I don't know why. Or we need you to fit a new bathroom. Or Brad, we want you to put up a curtain rail, and this time it actually has to be level. Doing any of that would leave me sweating and anxious because I don't have either the skill or the leaning for any of those sorts of useful practical jobs. I got married for that reason. That's what Esther's for. She can do all that practical stuff. But I know that there are people in our church who would love working with their hands, and work like this for them would be a joy, not a burden to them. A friend of mine gave me a fantastic tool to use when writing a sermon. She said that every sermon should have something for people to practically do. She said it should say, there should be what am I going to do by next Thursday? Otherwise, it was all just a bunch of big ideas, and it made it hard for her to stay focused. And I've been thinking about this a lot, actually, and I've been praying about this word, and I got a sense that right now, in the middle of all this uncertainty, where so many of us have felt so low, you don't need to do anything. You can just sit at his feet. And I feel like God's trying to encourage us that in this moment, he has given us an opportunity to see that he is present in every moment. If we simply look for him. He isn't stuck in our church building. He is bigger than our church building. And I'd like to encourage you that if you're feeling burdened, you can put your burdens down and just sit at Jesus' feet. Remember why you've been doing what you've been doing. And I think I'd like to close with that song from the Passion album. It's helped me to look for Jesus in every moment. It's been a huge encouragement for me. And it's helped me to remember that why. I'm going to pray, and hopefully the video will come up. There, maybe over there. Up there. Either way, Lord Jesus, thank you so much that you are with us in every moment. That when our hearts are downcast, when we feel weary, that you're there, that you are the greatest miracle, that every breath that we have is a gift from you, every moment is a treasure. I pray you be with us this week. Amen.